Isabella stood quietly in the dim kitchen, her fingers gently circling the edge of her coffee cup. The clock flashed past midnight, but Daniel had yet to return home. Her heart felt heavy, not from anger, but from concern. Ever since she married Michael, she'd tried reaching out to Daniel, but he seemed determined to keep her at a distance. Moments later, the sound of footsteps crunching on the gravel outside interrupted her thoughts. The door creaked open and Daniel walked in. His shirt was torn near the shoulder, dirt streaked across his jeans, and his face wore an expression of tension, a mixture of fatigue and unease. "You're late," Isabella said softly, not wanting to startle him. Daniel glanced at her with exhausted eyes, muttering something under his breath before trudging toward his room. "Wait!" she called out. "What happened?" "Nothing, don't worry about it," he mumbled, but Isabella could tell something was off. The unease clung to him like an approaching storm. She wanted to ask more but was afraid of pushing him further away, so instead, she chose to wait. The next evening, Daniel sat quietly at the dinner table, absent-mindedly moving his food around with his fork. Michael tried to initiate a conversation, but Daniel responded with short answers. Isabella watched him closely, noting how his usual distant demeanor had shifted to something more anxious, restless. "I'm heading out," Daniel finally announced, pushing his chair back. "Where to?" Michael asked. "Just out," Daniel replied, and Isabella exchanged a concerned glance with her husband. Something wasn't right. Later that night, Isabella noticed that Daniel's bedroom light was still on. She hesitated outside his door before knocking gently. "Daniel, are you okay?" There was no response. She cracked the door open slightly and found him sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at his phone, his shoulders tight and his gaze distant. "Whatever this is," she said softly, "you don't have to go through it alone." Daniel didn't look up. "I'm fine," he muttered, but Isabella wasn't convinced. She left his room, unsettled by the feeling that Daniel was in trouble. The next evening, as the sun began to set, she quietly followed him when he left the house. He walked quickly down the street, eventually disappearing into a dark alley. Isabella kept her distance, her heart racing. A few minutes later, she saw him talking to a group of boys. Their laughter echoed in the alley, but there was nothing friendly about it. One of the boys shoved Daniel's shoulder, not hard but enough to show dominance. Daniel stiffened, and Isabella's breath caught in her throat. The boys handed Daniel something small that sparkled under the flickering streetlight. Daniel hesitated for a moment before slipping it into his pocket. Before she could think, Isabella stepped from the shadows. "Daniel!" she called, her voice sharper than she intended. Daniel froze, his face flashing with panic. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "You need to come home," Isabella said firmly. "Leave me alone," he snapped, though his voice trembled. The boys sneered and backed away, muttering insults under their breath. When they disappeared down the alley, Daniel let out a shaky breath, his tough exterior crumbling. "I didn't know what else to do," he whispered, his voice breaking. "They said if I didn't help them, they'd come after me." Isabella gently placed a hand on his arm. "Whatever this is, we'll face it together, I promise." For the first time, Daniel didn't pull away. His shoulders slumped as if a weight had been lifted. Later, Daniel sat in the living room, staring blankly at the flickering TV screen. Isabella walked in quietly and set a cup of tea on the table next to him. "You can't keep ignoring this," she said softly. "I'm handling it," Daniel muttered, his eyes fixed on the screen. "You're not," Isabella replied. "I saw what happened last night. Those boys aren't your friends." Daniel clenched his jaw. "I didn't ask you to follow me." "I didn't have a choice," she answered. "You came home one night with a torn shirt, and the next you're sneaking out with people who don't care about you. What was I supposed to do?" His face twisted in frustration. "I'm not a kid. I can take care of myself." "No, you're not a kid," Isabella said firmly but calmly. "But you're making choices that are putting you in danger." For a moment, neither spoke. The silence felt heavy. I don't know what else to do," Daniel mumbled, his voice cracking. "They won't leave me alone." "Who?" "Jason and his guys," Daniel admitted. I started hanging out with them after Mum died. I didn't know how to deal with everything, and they—" He stopped, his voice faltering. "They made you feel like you belonged," Isabella finished softly. Daniel nodded, his eyes darkening. "At first, yeah, but now they won't let me go. They say I owe them." "Owe them what?" Isabella asked. "Favors," Daniel said bitterly. "Driving them places, running errands, nothing big at first. But now they want me to steal something. If I don't, they said they'd come after me." Fear flickered in his eyes, a vulnerability Isabella hadn't seen before. "You're not doing that," she said firmly. "I don't have a choice," Daniel muttered. "You always have a choice," Isabella replied. "And I'm not going to let you face this alone," Daniel scoffed, shaking his head. "You don't get it. They know where I live. They know about you and Dad. If I don't do what they say—" His voice trailed off. "You think I'm afraid of them?" Isabella's voice sharpened. "No one threatens this family, not while I'm here." Daniel looked at her, doubt flickering in his eyes. "I need you to trust me," Isabella said. "Let me talk to your dad. We'll figure this out together." "You think Dad's going to fix this?" Daniel shot back. "He barely talks to me anymore because he's scared," Isabella said gently. "He doesn't know how to reach you." Daniel exhaled heavily, running his fingers through his hair. "I can't drag you into this." "You didn't drag me into anything," Isabella replied. "You're part of this family. That means we face things together." For a moment, Daniel just stared at her, unsure whether to believe her. "Please," she said quietly. "Let me help you." After a long pause, Daniel gave a small, hesitant nod. "Okay." Relief washed over Isabella's face. "We'll fix this," she promised, and for the first time in a long while, Daniel felt like maybe that was true. Daniel paced back and forth in his room, his mind racing. He knew Jason wouldn't back off easily, despite Isabella's promise to help. The knot in his stomach wouldn't loosen. His phone buzzed, Jason's name lighting up the screen. "You've got one more night," the message read. "Don't forget." Panic surged through him. He grabbed his jacket and slipped out the front door. He needed to stop this before it went any further. Isabella heard the door click shut and immediately knew what was happening. Without hesitation, she grabbed her keys and followed. Daniel reached the corner where Jason and his group often gathered. The flickering streetlight cast jagged shadows on their faces. "You're late," Jason sneered. "I'm not doing it," Daniel said, his voice steady yet trembling. Jason moved closer, narrowing his eyes. "That's not how this works." "I don't care," Daniel shot back. "I'm done." The other boys laughed ominously, moving in behind Jason. "You think you can walk away?" Jason sneered. "I don't owe you anything," Daniel replied, taking a step back. "I should have never trusted you." The next morning, Isabella sat across from Michael at the kitchen table, speaking quietly but urgently. She told him everything, Jason's threats, Daniel's involvement, and the danger they were all in. Michael's expression hardened as he absorbed the news. "He should have told me," Michael muttered, his voice thick with frustration. "He's scared," Isabella replied. "We need to show him that we're on his side." Later that day, Michael called Daniel into the living room. Daniel entered with tense shoulders, expecting anger. "I know what's been going on," Michael said calmly. "I understand you've been trying to handle this alone." "I didn't want you involved," Daniel mumbled. "You're my son," Michael said firmly. "If someone's threatening you, they're threatening all of us." Daniel's face softened, his guard dropping. "I didn't know what else to do," he admitted. "We're handling this together," Michael said. "The first step is going to the police." Daniel's face twisted with panic. "No, Jason will—" "Jason's a coward," Michael cut in. "He's not as powerful as he makes himself out to be." "I'll go with you," Isabella added gently. "You won't face this alone." That evening, the three of them sat at the station as Daniel nervously explained everything to the officer. His hands trembled as he detailed the threats, the pressure to steal, and the constant fear. The officer listened attentively, taking notes and asking questions. "You did the right thing coming here," the officer assured him. "We know about Jason and his group. We'll take care of it." Relief flooded Daniel, but a knot of doubt remained. 2 nights later, Daniel stood by the window, anxiously peering out. "What if they come tonight?" he asked. "They won't," Michael reassured him from across the room. "The police are watching the house. They won't risk it." Still, Daniel couldn't shake the unease. Hours passed before headlights appeared at the end of the street, the car slowing as it rumbled. Daniel's heart raced as he recognized the vehicle, Jason's. "They're here," Daniel whispered. Michael stood calmly and reached for his phone. Within minutes, 2 police cars turned onto the street with their lights flashing. Jason's car sped off, but the officers quickly intercepted it. Daniel watched through the window as Jason and 2 others were pulled out of the car, handcuffed, and led away. "It's over," Isabella said softly. Daniel exhaled deeply, feeling the tension melt away. Later that night, as Isabella passed Daniel's room, she noticed the door slightly open. She found him sitting on his bed, scrolling through old pictures on his phone. One photo showed him and his mother smiling, her arm wrapped tightly around him. "I miss her," Daniel said quietly, not looking up. "I know," Isabella replied, stepping inside, "and I know she'd be proud of you for being strong and standing up for yourself." Daniel smiled faintly. "Thanks for everything." "You don't have to thank me," Isabella said. "Your family?" For the first time, Daniel truly believed it. The weeks that followed brought a calmness that Daniel hadn't experienced in a long time. The tension that once hung in the house faded, replaced by quiet conversations and shared meals. Michael began spending more time with him, not out of obligation but in moments that felt natural. They would watch games together or chat in the garage while Michael worked on his car. One afternoon, Isabella found Daniel sitting on the back porch, staring off into the distance. "You okay?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Yeah, I guess," Daniel replied. "It's just weird. Everything feels normal." "That's a good thing," Isabella said with a smile. "I know," Daniel nodded, "but I keep thinking about how close I came to messing everything up. If you hadn't stopped me that night—" "You didn't mess anything up," Isabella interrupted. "You were just trying to survive." Daniel looked down at his hands. "I should have come to you sooner." "You know what matters," Isabella said gently. "You trusted me when it counted." Daniel's expression softened, and for the first time in weeks his shoulders relaxed. The following weekend, Michael surprised Daniel with a new set of tools for his bike, something they had bonded over years ago but had drifted away from after Daniel's mother passed. As they worked together in the garage, Michael paused and said, "Your mom, she'd be proud of you." Daniel swallowed hard, pretending to focus on tightening a bolt. "I don't know about that." "I do," Michael said firmly. "She always said you were strong. I just didn't see it for a while. But you've proven her right." Daniel's eyes burned, but he blinked back the tears. "Thanks for being there." "You're stuck with me," Michael said with a grin. Later that night, Daniel was in his room when Isabella knocked on his door. She handed him a small envelope. "I found this in your mum's things a while back," she said softly. "I think you should have it." Curious, Daniel opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter from his mother, dated just a few months before she passed. In her neat handwriting, she had written about how proud she was of him, how she believed he would grow into someone strong, kind, and capable. Tears welled in his eyes as he read her final words. "No matter what happens, you'll always find your way. Trust yourself and the people who love you." Daniel carefully set the letter down, as though it might break. "She believed in you," Isabella said softly. "I know," Daniel whispered. "And I'm starting to believe in myself too." For the first time in a long time, Daniel felt whole again. No longer trapped in fear or regret, he was a young man ready to face whatever came next, knowing he had people standing by his side. In the following weeks, Daniel found himself adjusting to a new rhythm, one that didn't involve looking over his shoulder or second-guessing every step he took. The weight that once seemed impossible to lift was finally easing. He returned to school with a clearer mind, focusing on his studies and reconnecting with friends he had distanced himself from. One afternoon, Isabella picked him up from school. As they drove home, she glanced at him and asked, "How's everything going?" "Better," Daniel replied. "I actually feel normal again." "That's good," Isabella said with a smile. "I know things haven't been easy," Daniel admitted. "I was so sure things would never get better, but I'm glad I was wrong." When they pulled into the driveway, Daniel saw a familiar face waiting on the porch, Alex, an old friend he hadn't spoken to in months. He hesitated before stepping out of the car. "Hey," Alex said, shoving his hands in his pockets. "I heard about what happened with Jason and all." Daniel tensed, unsure where the conversation was headed. "I just wanted to say, I should have reached out sooner," Alex continued. "I knew you were going through stuff, but I didn't know how to help." "It's okay," Daniel said. "I wasn't exactly good at letting people in." "Well, if you ever need someone to talk to," Alex offered. "I'm still here." A small smile tugged at Daniel's lips. "Yeah, I'd like that." That evening, Daniel sat at the kitchen table while Isabella cooked dinner. The comforting scent of spices filled the air, and for once the house felt warm. Not just from the heat, but from something deeper. "You know," Daniel said suddenly, "I never really thanked you." "For what?" Isabella asked, not turning around. "For stepping in, for not giving up on me." The evening air felt refreshing as she unlocked her door, tossing her keys onto the table. Weariness weighed on her thoughts spinning from a long day. She was too tired to prepare a full meal, so she opted for a quick snack before curling up on the couch. The TV hummed softly in the background, but soon her eyelids grew heavy, and before long, she drifted into sleep. Hours passed, and the house remained still, except for the faint creak of the front door. He entered quietly, his footsteps gentle on the wooden floor. He hadn't meant to stop by, but after her unanswered message had worried him, he decided to check on her. There she was, fast asleep, her face peaceful and her breathing calm. A small smile tugged at his lips as he remembered how she always pushed herself too hard, giving more than she should. He noticed that her light blanket had slipped off, leaving her curled up and shivering. Without a word, he reached for the throw draped over the armchair and gently covered her with it. She shifted slightly, murmuring in her sleep, but never woke. He gazed at her serene face, and his heart ached with emotions he'd kept hidden for so long. Next to her on the table was a notepad and pen. An idea came to him, simple yet thoughtful. He quickly jotted down a note, pausing occasionally to find the right words. "I stopped by to check on you. You looked so peaceful, so I didn't want to disturb you. Sleep well. You deserve it." His hand hesitated for a moment before adding one last line. "I know things have been difficult, but you're stronger than you think. Don't forget that." He carefully placed the note next to her phone and looked around the kitchen. The faint aroma of lavender lingered, one of her favorite soothing scents. Smiling, he pulled out her favorite herbal tea from the cupboard. Moments later, he left a steaming mug of tea on the table right beside his note. The warmth from the mug rose gently, releasing a familiar fragrance he knew would comfort her when she woke. Standing quietly in the doorway, he took one last glance at her. His feelings, the ones he'd been too afraid to express, felt lighter now. He whispered softly, "Good night," before closing the door behind him. The first light of morning peeked through the curtains, gently warming her face. She stirred, her fingers curling under the soft blanket. For a brief moment, she wondered how it had ended up there. Sitting up, her eyes fell on the note next to her phone. Curious, she reached for it. As she read, her heart softened. His handwriting was familiar, steady and gentle. Her fingers traced the last sentence. "Don't forget that." A smile formed on her lips. She couldn't remember the last time someone had taken such care of her. Then she noticed the tea still warm, its fragrance filling the air. She wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the heat sink into her fingers. The taste was perfect, made just the way she liked it. She took a slow sip, her thoughts drifting to him. Memories flooded back, like the time he waited outside her office after a long day, standing by his car just to make sure she got home safely. Or when he brought her soup while she was sick, claiming he just happened to be nearby. He always seemed to know when she needed someone, even when she never spoke a word. She realized then how much he'd been there for her, quietly, steadily, never asking for anything in return. Her chest tightened, and she felt a mix of gratitude and something deeper, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel until now. Her phone buzzed, and it was him. "Hey, hope you're feeling better today." She stared at the message, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Words seemed too small for what she wanted to express, so she simply replied, "Thank you for everything." Moments later, her phone lit up again, anytime. Just one word, yet it held so much more. She understood now that what she felt wasn't just gratitude, it was something stronger, something real. Later that evening, there was a knock at the door and her heart skipped a beat. She knew it was him. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door to find his familiar smile. "I just wanted to check on you," he said softly, holding a small bag. "I brought dinner, thought you might not have eaten yet." She stepped aside to let him in, and the room filled with the comforting scent of warm food. But her thoughts kept drifting back to the note and the emotions it had stirred in her. "You didn't have to do all this," she said, her voice quieter than she meant. "I wanted to," he replied without hesitation. "You've been through a lot. I just wanted to make things a little easier." They sat together, sharing quiet moments between bites. The conversation flowed naturally, filled with memories, silly moments they'd laughed about and deeper thoughts they'd never shared before. As the plates emptied, silence settled between them. She knew this was her moment, the chance to say what had been weighing on her all day. "I read your note," she began, her voice hesitant, "and I've been thinking a lot." His gaze fixed on hers, patient but cautious. "You've always been there," she continued, "even when I didn't notice, even when I didn't ask." "I didn't mind," he replied quietly. "I just wanted you to be okay." "I know," she whispered, "and I think I've started feeling something more because of it." For a moment he just stared, unsure if he had heard her correctly. "You don't have to say anything," she added quickly, feeling her face flush. I needed you to know." He smiled. Not the casual smile she was used to, but something deeper, something genuine. "I'm glad you told me," he said softly, "because I've been feeling the same way for a long time." Her breath caught, and before she could speak again, his hand reached across the table, gently covering hers. The warmth of his touch was steady and reassuring, as though he had been waiting for this moment just as much as she had. His hand stayed on hers, his fingers curling slightly as though afraid she might pull away. But she didn't. Instead, she let her hand relax under his, feeling the warmth spread from her fingertips to her chest. "I don't know why I never noticed it before," she admitted quietly. "I guess I was too caught up in everything else." "You had a lot going on," he said gently. "I didn't want to push you." "You should have," she said with a soft smile. "I think I needed someone like you more than I realized." His thumb traced her knuckles, slow and deliberate. "I was just waiting for you to see it." They sat in silence for a moment, both quietly smiling. Finally, he leaned closer, his eyes soft, yet full of something deeper. "I know this might sound crazy," he said, "but when I saw you asleep last night, I didn't want to leave. I just wanted to stay there and make sure you were okay." "I felt it," she said softly. "When I woke up, everything just felt different, like I wasn't alone." "You're not," he said firmly. "Not anymore." His hand slid from hers, moving slowly until his fingers brushed her cheek. She closed her eyes at his touch, feeling the tension she had been holding melt away. "I don't want to rush this," he whispered, "but I can't pretend I don't feel this anymore." "You don't have to," she replied. His hand lingered for a moment longer before he leaned in, pressing his forehead gently to hers. The world outside seemed to fade away, no stress, no noise, just the quiet comfort of being close. "I'm glad you came over," she whispered. "I'm glad you let me," he replied. They sat together in silence, no words needed. Just two hearts finally finding what they had been searching for, something steady, something real, something they no longer had to chase. Over the next few days, everything felt different, easier, warmer. Conversations flowed naturally and the silence between them was comfortable rather than uncertain. He started coming over more often, not out of concern but because it felt right. She no longer felt the need to hide how much she enjoyed having him around. One evening, they sat together on her balcony, watching the sky change from gold to deep blue. The air was cool, but she hardly noticed. His arm rested on the back of her chair, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I used to wonder if you'd ever notice," he said softly. "I thought maybe you just didn't see me that way." "I think I was too afraid to," she admitted. "I didn't want to mess up what we already had." "You never could," he said firmly. "I don't care how long it took. I'm just glad you're here now." She leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling his steady breath beneath her. "Me too." Moments later, he shifted slightly and reached into his pocket. "I've been holding on to this," he said, pulling out a small folded note. Curious, she took it from his hand and unfolded the paper. Inside was a simple line written in his familiar handwriting. "You'll always have me, no matter what." Her fingers trembled slightly as she held the note, realizing he must have written it long before she ever knew how he felt. "You were always sure about me?" she asked. "Always," he said without hesitation. "I was just waiting for you to be sure, too." She smiled, folding the note carefully before tucking it in her pocket. "I'm sure now," she whispered. He turned to face her fully, his eyes soft but steady. Without a word, he leaned in, brushing his lips gently against hers. It wasn't rushed or uncertain, just soft, warm, and filled with quiet promises. When they pulled away, she smiled. "You know," she teased, "you could have just told me how you felt sooner." He laughed, shaking his head. "I didn't want to do anything crazy." "You mean like sneaking in and leaving me tea in the middle of the night?" She grinned. "I'd say that worked out pretty well." "Yeah," he said softly, his fingers intertwining with hers. "It really did."